In this video I'm going to demonstrate some of the differences between the Lumia 1520 and the 925 here in terms of the way the resolution changes things for apps. Now the 925 here, 4.5-inch screen, 768p resolution, the 1520 here a 6-inch screen and 1080p resolution. Now there's one obvious difference you can see here on the start screen. There's 3 live tiles of the standard size across on the 1520 versus 2 on the 925, so you can fit a lot more on the 1520 start screen. You can pin more to it. In reality, what it means is you actually end up making more use of these double wide live tile sizes, at least from my experience with the phone. The smaller tile sizes are also handy, but you can see here I've got 2 different layouts. But I think it's a really great change. It makes a lot of sense when you've got the 6-inch screen device. A lot of the other changes are subtler, and in order to show them to you I've actually taken a series of screenshots rather than go through the apps, which is going to be a bit difficult to demonstrate in a video. So these are all screenshots collected from each of the phones respectively. Now you can see here we're in the store app and you can see the number of icons displayed on the 1520. You just get a couple extra. Now some differences you'll expect because there's actually a slight difference between these screens in terms of 16:9 or say 768p versus 720p. So the scaling's slightly different anyway, but actually you can see here you are getting some extra information. Otherwise we just expect a little extra slither, and we'll see that in some of the other applications we look at. So if we go on, you can see here now, this is an example of email. What you've got here on the 1520 is an extra line of the body preview text in the email. You can see you just get 1 there, you get 2 here, and you also see a little bit extra in terms of at the bottom there. So we go on to another one. This is here Maps. It's effectively a third-party app, but what you can see here is you get exactly the same thing displayed. However, on the 1520 you've actually got the ability to kind of zoom out. You can see even here we're not at the same size in terms of the icons and things like that, and being able to see a little bit more on the screen. That's kind of the advantage of having a bigger screen. So it's not just necessarily what's displayed by default, it's what zoom level you can go to. That obviously varies from application to application. Nowhere is that really more apparent than here in the Excel app. This is Office we're looking at, and this is exactly the same spreadsheet, but you can see we've gone out to the maximum zoom for this screenshot, and you can see a lot of extra information displayed here on the 1523 versus 925. You can actually just see some charts and a whole extra rows of data. We'll illustrate that again with another screenshot here. You can see this is actually a fairly similar zoom level, but it's easier to read this. You could actually work with this and read it, whereas this you'd probably have to zoom in before you can do anything. Another example of that, you can see here again, this is at the maximum zoom setting. It's just that bit in the screen there versus here. You can see it's actually similar in size here, but you'd be able to see a lot more. So Excel, I think, is actually one of the apps that benefits most from having the larger screen on the 1520. You can see something similar in PowerPoint here. The ability to kind of read off a slide in the PowerPoint is easier on this bigger screen. Looking at the Word application, again, you're actually seeing a similar amount of information on screen, a little bit extra here on the 1520, but you've got the much bigger keyboard, so that's easier to type on, and also the text is bigger. That's kind of more obvious if we go to here. The same bit of the Word document is shown here, and it's all the reflow and the words here. So the actual content is very similar, but you can see just looking at this, it's going to be a lot easier to do the reading of this, or if you have to do any editing. Same in the Onenote application. Again, the text is just bigger. It's actually very similar in terms of what's being displayed, and then we can see a list there in OneNote. Notifications, so this is obviously in the People Hub. You're actually seeing an extra few notifications, so there's some scaling of text here, so there is actually an adjustment here. It's not just about the zoom. This is a third-party application. On all the third-party applications, there's currently none that we're aware of that actually optimise for the 1520, so really it is all about just having the same information displayed bigger, and this is the official Twitter app. A lot of the built-in applications, there's no adjustment here. You can see the calculator. Looking at web browsing, it's a sort of more complex picture. We've got the All About Windows phone site loaded here, and you can see you're seeing pretty much exactly the same text, but again, you're seeing it at a bigger scale here, so it's easier to read. But if you go to some websites, that actually has an important impact. So we've got the BBC News website here. This is kind of fully zoomed out, very difficult to read anything on here, but you could actually justifiably say, yes, it's quite comfortable here on the 1520. That becomes more apparent on kind of other sites there. I think we've got Wikipedia here. You can actually read this article text. Where it's not impossible, but it's difficult here, so it's the advantage of the bigger screen. If we go to an individual page here, this is actually from the mobile site, it's the same thing again, similar text on screen, but you can actually read it. BBC iPlayer application, another example of a third-party application where the scaling is pretty much exactly the same. The only small difference here is actually for the fact you've got not quite the same aspect ratio on these two screens. But then we go back to an inbuilt application. This is text messaging. You can see it's actually, you see an extra couple of texts here when I've been texting my sister here. If we go and then look at entering text, you can see that does make a difference. You can read the text above or the line above, which you can't on the 925. So quite a subtle adjustment there in some of the inbuilt applications, but it does make a difference. So the 1520 here, it's not just about making things bigger on the screen. You actually get more information as well in quite a few apps. And we'll finish off with we've been in the Photos app looking at all these screenshots with one of the things I think is most effective. You can see here, this is a list of albums. Rather than having 2 across on the 925, we've got 3 across here, so you can see many more albums at one time. So there are a whole bunch of the inbuilt applications that do have these adjustments. Messaging is a good example. When you come to the third-party apps, you won't see that same thing. Here's the iPlayer, for example. But you will get the advantage of kind of, if you like, the zooming, so you see things at a bigger scale. So all in all, there's actually more adjustments on the 1520 in terms of what's in Windows Phone 8 Update 3 for making a difference, for having a different screen size than I thought there would be. And I've come to really appreciate the quite subtle nature of some of the changes. So there we go. That hopefully gives you a good summary of the advantages of having the bigger screen here on the 1520 in terms of the apps and the software running on the phone.